Hello, everybody. I'm Frank Tortorici, certified fitness specialist, functional diagnostic nutritionist, out here in sunny Los Angeles, California. And I'm here joined by Derek Henry, founder of the Thrive Online program and healingthebody.ca. Derek, awesome to chat it up with you again here today. We're getting some really cool responses from everybody with these videos, really cool questions. So we just wanted to keep the momentum moving for you guys and just keep this dialogue of health and wellness and healing moving in these really interesting times of the world. So today we want to touch on the black sheep. What we mean by that is when you become the black sheep in your family and society, amongst friends in your workplace, anyone who embarks on this journey of really radical healing, you start to feel like you are a black sheep within society, whether you're at a family function, holiday parties, work dinners, if you're dating somebody new and you're going out to dinner or to their house cooking. There's always this weird, food is a very common ground that we all tend to gel upon and connect upon. It's a very social thing. So Derek, doing what you do, doing what I do, we hear these rebuttals all the time as to why a person can't do this, can't do that, or, so many roadblocks, right? There's so many excuses that an individual can have. I know for me, when I started being a black sheep, was probably at like a family function where, it was a 4th of July party, if I remember correctly, and I'm bringing my kale salads at the time and all that. Really interesting looks I got from everybody. So my question to you, Derek, when did you realize that, like, damn, like I'm a black sheep. I'm going against the grain within society. Like, when did it really hit you? Like, I've made some changes.
Well, not long. When I was forced to become a black sheep, although I'm willingly a black sheep now, but at the time I wasn't looking to be different than anyone else, because I didn't see for there to reason to be any different than anyone else. But as I continued along my journey, I found more and more that why it made sense that I wanted to be a black sheep. I wanted to be different in the health industry, in the health movement. And I think once I started to even eat organic, I mean, as interesting as that is now, it's a little bit more popular now. But when I first started over 10 years ago, in my area where I lived, organic was a very, very, very small niche. And when I decided that I needed to get better and quickly, and I was going to do it through nutrition and supplementation, that was going to be my primary way to do it. One of the first things I did was to seek out organic health food store. And at the time, there was only one, and it was really small in a city of probably 200,000 people. And when I started eating that organic food, and once people caught wind that Derek's eating organic, immediately I was, kind of jokingly chastised. Why are you doing this? It's organic. And, even if at the time I was still, drinking alcohol once in a while, we'd go out and everyone would be like, do you need your organic beer, Derek? Like these kinds of things, right? Where no one really understood it. And I started to realize right away, I'm like, this is going to be tricky. But for me, it didn't matter. I knew that either I did this or I was going to die an untimely and painful death, because that's where I was at the time. So for me, the discipline wasn't hard. For me to set in motion what I want to do wasn't hard. I wasn't afraid to be a standout or a black sheep. It's not something that I wanted to do or was searching to do. I wish everyone would have embraced it, but it didn't change my journey. I was so intent on what I needed to do. Nothing was going to distract me. So that was the first time that I realized. And of course, as I got more and more into it, started taking various supplements and told people that you should stop eating certain types of food and you should avoid these types of things, and started going for acupuncture, which again at the time was out there, but it might have been a little woo-woo to some people. Why are you doing that? How is putting needles in your body actually helping you get healthier? So as I continued along that journey, and of course I got thicker and thicker skin as it went along. I just found out more and more that I'm really out there, and but eventually I just came to embrace it and actually enjoy it.
Mm. So yeah, I mean, you touched on that, when you started this, it was quite some time ago. I think you said about, what, a decade ago?
Yep.
Give or take? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, mine was 18 years ago, and I'm sure, like, from my 18 years and your 10, we've seen a lot of shifts within society. I know for myself, 18 years ago, almond milk was like, the hell are you drinking?
Yeah.
What it, what comes to your mind? Like, if you could tell me like one thing that you've seen, something that was so taboo when you started about a decade ago to now that's like so socially accepted, or like clients that you work with. What are some of the things that you hear from them on a day-to-day basis that's making them feel as a black sheep? So it's
Yeah.
a two-part question.
Yeah. So I think, as I said before, I think the first thing um, is the organic food that I already mentioned. I mean, back then, like I said, where I would live, it was very odd, but now it is mainstream. All the friends and family and people that I know that were making light of me eating organic food 10 years ago are now all eating organic food, or most of them are, which is really
But
interesting.
could you elaborate on that? I mean, organic, yeah, but give me like a specific thing, like almond milk, or something that was like kind of odd at that time that you're seeing is like more and more people are eating this now or consuming it. Like, could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Again, I think you hit on one, because when I first started, I think like a lot of people you start looking for alternatives to the common things that many of us who are used to as children. And one of them is dairy products. I mean, dairy is one of the first things I switched off of. And although my first switch wasn't to almond milk, I think it was to soy milk actually. That was made fun of at the time, and we now know that soy milk wasn't the best choice, but that was a better choice for me at the time. And then, I ended up going to rice milk and then almond milk, and then, I still drink almond milk today and coconut milk. But I think those alternative dairies were really out there. It's like, what's wrong with cow's milk? I mean, why would you even consider switching to something else? That's kind of funny. So that was a big one, because that was one of the first things I actually switched. Because I was still eating some other foods, I might have been organic, but I was still eating cereals every day and things like that. But I switched out my milk, and that was different to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that I stopped eating food too was a lot of grains. A lot of gluten-filled grains. And again, at the time, what's wrong with gluten? What's the deal? Why is that a big deal? And today, I mean, it's arguably one of the hottest topics out there. I mean, just look on the shelves. The gluten-free movement, all the gluten-free stuff, even if the actual food doesn't contain gluten or not, it still has often gluten-free on it for people to know. I mean, it's absolutely exploded. And if you don't know about gluten, then you're probably either living under a rock or in a cave. I mean, really, how do you not know about the gluten movement at this point? It's become so popular that people avoid. Not everyone avoids it still, but a lot of people do. But back then, avoiding it was like, what's this all about? This doesn't even make any sense.
So I want to stop there, and this kind of veers off a little bit. But being that you brought up the topic of gluten, do you think that majority of people are gluten intolerant, or it's more of the genetically engineering and gluten products and the sprays and all that's causing a lot of these symptoms of a gluten intolerance? Like, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I think it's both.
Yeah.
I think that what they've done like use wheat as an example, what they've done to the crops has definitely created a lot of issues, especially something that not a lot of people know about. And I used to do this as a farmer way back when I was growing up on the farm. We used to desiccate our wheat, which was another way of saying you spray it with glyphosate or Roundup to mature it. So when you're spraying that on the actual seeds that are actually going to be eaten, that's a big deal. That's going to cause a lot of different types of allergies. So that's one thing. But I think also, like you said, not to be confused with GMO, because there's not any real widespread GMO wheat out there yet. I mean, there's trials and stuff going on. But the hybridization, as you mentioned, which is a slight variation of what's going on, which has increased the gluten content, I think that, along with the inability of people to digest it, really, is what it comes down to. Their lack of resonance with it, the lack of, as I say, digestive infrastructure to actually break down that protein. And as soon as you have that lack of breaking things down, this is where the allergies, these are the things start to kick in. If your body can metabolize and break it down properly, you don't have an issue. But if it can't, you're in trouble. So I think a lot of people haven't been able to keep up with the hybridization, especially. And I think if some people could clean up their gut health and maybe go back to the old traditional wheats, like einkorn is one, and red fife is another one, and go back to those ones that aren't the gluten is more natural to what we were used to back then, and they start to even eat breads that are fermented, like sourdough and things like that. I think that can really change people's intolerance to gluten.
Yeah. So what would you say? I mean, you work with people all over the world. What's like one of the most common things you hear from some of your clients as to what's making it difficult for them to function within their clique of friends, family, coworkers? Like, Is there a common theme that you constantly hear of like, oh, I can't do that because of this, or like what would you say on that?
I think most people, families of people you spend the most time with usually, and usually it's a lot of people that I work with are women, and they're doing a lot of the cooking a lot of times in the household too, and they end up there's a little complaints there that they have to cook something different for themselves when they're
Right,
at least
right.
initially and sometimes it's not a big hassle, sometimes it's just slightly different. The family sometimes often catches on and does a little bit, which is good. But
Hmm.
usually they have to do a little bit of the side stuff, so they got to almost sort of not do two separate meals, but they got to do some side stuff.
Right.
When it comes to going to parties and things like that, there's a lot of questions around that, like what do you do? And for me in the beginning, and probably still now, I just wouldn't eat food. I often called it a forced fast. If I
Right.
went to a party that wasn't by a health conscious
Right.
person, I just wouldn't eat. I
Right.
would, if there was some decent water or something there, I would focus on, or there's fruit there, I'd focus on that, and that's all I would eat. I'm like, whatever, it's a forced fast, not a bad deal. Everyone loves
Yeah.
intermittent fasting these days. Just fast at these parties. Now, when it comes to the other part, which is a part that's really ingrained in our society too, is drinking alcohol, right? How do you stop doing that? And for me, it was just like, people just know up front that that's not really my thing. And
Yeah.
if I do, which is a rare occasion, the amount of drinks I'd have in a year is probably the amount that most people would have at a party. If I
Right.
do, I have other things that can make everyone knows me well enough that I have things that can upgrade certain habits. So if you're gonna
Right.
if you're gonna drink, then drink the most friendliest alcohol, and if you're gonna drink it, use a good mix rather than some of those soda syrups or whatever they are.
Right.
Use a
Right.
Kavita instead that has probiotics and enzymes in it. This is going to be helpful. So it's not I'm not endorsing that people, this is what you should do, but there's upgrades to everything. And
Yeah.
you can do that at parties, and so that you don't, so people can still see you, they might still see you as a black sheep, but if you're really committed to it and you really want to be this way, eventually you're going to find more people like I have, and I'm sure like you have. My family has become a bit of a black sheep in society now because they've just slowly followed a lot of the things that I've done.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wasn't doing it on purpose. I was just leading by example, I guess, and eventually you'll find maybe a small community of people that are going to think like you, and that'll give you enough firepower so that you're not maybe feeling alone all the time if that's the way you feel.
Yeah, and I think too, just to elaborate on that too for the listeners, the more you understand why you're doing what you're doing, you start to feel less and less of a black sheep, and you start to actually feel sorry for those that are wreaking havoc on their system. So the education always has to be there. It's a never-ending process, as you and I both know, of learning and educating yourself about this stuff. So the more you understand that, the less pressure that word black sheep kind of sits on your shoulder in public settings. Um, Derek, real quick, I want to wrap this up, but I have a couple of rapid fire questions for you, and I just want like one word, maybe one sentence, simple answers for the viewers. So real quick, what is the biggest perk of being a black sheep for you, would you say?
The biggest perk of being a black sheep is that I easily find other black sheep just like me, so I can hang out with like-minded people.
All right. All right. Name one food or drink that always makes you feel like a black sheep when you're out in public settings.
One food or drink in public settings. That's a good question. Some
I
of
know
this.
I know you must travel with like some crazy stuff on airplanes and all that, because I'm guilty of that too. Like even that, like, what would make you feel like, oh God, they must be looking like I have 10 heads.
Some of it is supplements sometimes.
Okay.
I think something I often carry with me if I'm traveling or if I'm going to other people's parties even, and I often do it kind of discreetly, but I'll often carry HCl and enzymes with
Okay.
myself. So if there's something that
Okay.
I don't think is the best to eat, that I know that the digestion process is
Right.
going to go much more smoothly.
Right. Got it. Perfect. That makes total sense. All right. And then the last one I want to ask you is, if you could do it all over again, would you rather be a black sheep or just be average?
Um, that's a good question too. I mean, I never want to be average, so I always want to be above average. So, having said that, I think in my health, specifically speaking, I would
Yeah.
consider myself much above average in terms of the average normal out there. So in that case, I never want to be average. I would prefer to be the black sheep and be abnormal in my healthiness.
Cool. Cool. Well, awesome, man. Always a pleasure to chop it up with you. Thank you guys for listening, watching. Post your comments, shoot us the emails. We hope that you took some valuable pieces of information from here, and we continue to encourage you guys to thrive always and be in the best possible health. Thank you for joining us.